Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawm al-jazaa ma ba'd. So alhamdulillah, we make dua, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our gathering, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring us closer to Him through the words of His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We make dua, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all so much tawfiq, so much tawfiq, so much tawfiq, ameen ya rabbal alameen. What I wanted to do, inshallah, is continue from where our Shaikh Mateen, Dr. Mateen, may Allah preserve him, left off last week. Not the same topic, obviously, we're covering the other half of the book, but also what we spoke about 2 weeks ago regarding our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The chapter that we are going through with myself, Kitab Bad'il Khalq, the chapter about the beginning of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a little bit after the middle of the book of Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi. And we read the hadith from Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لما قضى الله عز وجل الخلق كتب في كتابه فهو عنده فوق العرش إن رحمتي غلبت غضبي. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to create, or made the decision to create, bring the universe into existence, كتب في كتابه, He wrote into His book, فَهُوَ عِنْدَهُ فَوْقَ الْعَرْشِ, and that is with Him above the arsh. إِنَّ رَحْمَتِي غَلَبَتْ غَضَبِي, indeed my mercy overwhelms or overpowers or overcomes my wrath. We spoke about, what the word arsh means, and we spoke about a number of different things related to the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to continue by explaining a couple of important things for us to understand about the belief of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah. And I may Allah give me the clarity and give us all the ability to properly understand and, more importantly, practice. We said that with regards to our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is a rule that we must keep in mind, this rule that has absolutely no exceptions. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. There is nothing like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything that you and me can point to, anything that you and me can imagine, anything that you and me can think about, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is categorically not that. Anything that has a particular shape or color or description, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the furthest away from that. Because everything that you and me imagine within the parameters and the metrics of the universe. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is not part of, He is not within, He is the creator of the universe. We don't believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a God within His creation. Whatever is part of creation does not apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a very clear, in this way anyway, distinction between the creation and the creator. Okay. I'm trying to look around and see if we can point to something. Okay. Okay, everybody can see that security camera up there in the corner? Okay. The glass, that little black glass or the lens of that security camera. Pretend for a moment that is everything in the universe that we know about and that we don't know about. Right? We just got pictures back from the James Webb telescope, right? Subhanallah. Everything in the universe is the size of that little black lens. Okay? Whatever is outside of that does not apply to what is inside of that. The laws of math, the laws of physics, the laws of logic, science, chemistry, biology, whatever operates within that, right, does not exist outside of that. There is an existence outside of that. Whatever is on the inside does not apply to the outside. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We call that existence, we refer to that existence, that is the creator of the universe, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not fit or take any space or does not exist within His creation. He is outside of His creation. And we shared this principle that then kind of can help us appreciate one of the ayat of the Quran here in the beginning of Surah Al-Imran. where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِي أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ مِنْهُ آيَاتٌ مُحْكَمَاتٌ هُنَّ أُمُّ الْكِتَابِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one who reveals the book to you, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Minhu ayatun muhkamatun hunna. From among these ayat, from among these verses, there are some which are muhkam, which we try to translate it as clear or decisive or unambiguous. Okay. There are majority of the verses of the Quran, they are muhkam in their nature, meaning it's not some hidden meaning, not some super esoteric spiritual meaning. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about charity, He's speaking about zakat, and He's saying that these are the people that can receive zakat. Right? He's not talking about purifying yourself, He's not talking about just smiling or being kind. He's talking about money, He's talking about who do you give your money to, and He's talking about who, right? From among the creation is a lawful recipient. It's not something very complicated or technical. What is the definition and the fiqh implications of each? That's a separate conversation. But this ayah is talking about a specific practice and very straightforward instructions related to it. وَالسَّارِقُ وَالسَّارِقَةُ فَقْطَعُوا أَيْدِيَهُمَا. The male thief and the female thief, what happens? فَقْطَعُوا أَيْدِيَهُمَا. The punishment is to amputate their hand. Okay? What counts as theft and who carries out the punishment? Again, that's part of a separate conversation. But this ayah is not talking about stealing someone's heart. It's not talking about, stealing glances. This is talking about a very specific crime and a very specific punishment. These are examples, among many other examples, of muhkam, clear ayat in the Quran. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأُخَرُ مُتَشَابِهَاتٍ. And there are others which are not clear. Mutashabih just basically is the opposite of muhkam. Muhkam means something that is clear, decisive. It can mean only one thing. And then mutashabih is the opposite of that. Shubha means something that is similar to something else. Meaning it's not 100% clear exactly what it is. It could be this or it could be something else, but it's not the actual thing. Mutashabih. In hifz, those of us who are memorizing Quran, what is a mutashabih ayat? Mutashabih ayat are those ayat that are repeated in different places. You kind of get messed up at times. Right? تِلْكَ أُمَّةٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ وَلَكُمْ مَا كَسَبْتُمْ وَلَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Which one is it? Right? إِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِ آيَاتُنَا قَالَ أَسَاطِيرُ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَيَقُولُونَ مَتَى هَذَا الْوَعْدُ إِن كُنتُمْ. There's like 5 of them, 4 of them throughout the Quran. Which surah are we talking about? Right? Mutashabihat. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about the mutashabihat in reference to the muhkamat? فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ. Those people who have zayg, some type of crookedness, some type of corruption, whatever it may be, spiritual or otherwise, they فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ. They run after, they fall behind, they insist on, obsess over the mutashabih things. There's so many very clear-cut things in our deen, very clear-cut instructions in the Quran and Sunnah. Aqimu salatu atu zakat, pray on time, have salah, have khushu in your salah, be good to your parents, be generous, don't be stingy, right? وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا. Don't walk arrogantly, right? Be nice to poor people, be nice to your neighbors. Rather than focusing and making that the bulk of your experience with getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the bulk of your worship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what do some people do? فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ. And who are these people? The ones who have some issue with their iman, some issue with their belief in Allah, some issue with their spiritual connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They worry about these unclear gray areas. They obsess over it and fuss over it. ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله. Right? You don't get anything out of it other than just more confusion and more corruption and more fitna. وابتغاء تأويله, insisting that I need to know what the answer is. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself does not clarify, whether or not Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us I cannot, none of us can go and ask him anymore anyway. Sahaba radiallahu anhum confirmed on the day of Arafah that on the day of the farewell Hajj of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that you delivered everything that you were supposed to deliver, right? And Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made all of that witness that he transmitted the deen correctly to them just about 4 months before he left this world sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why are you and me fixating on those things? وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. And then the ayah, وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ يَقُولُونَ آمَنَّا بِهِ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. The people who are rasikh, pukhta, people who are firm and very well grounded in their knowledge and their understanding and study of the Quran and Sunnah, what do they say? What do the people of Iman say? Amanna billah, we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever He said, He said. Whatever He means by it, He knows best what He means by it. Okay? وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Only the people with common sense and really correct understanding of priorities are the ones who understand what this ayah is talking about, the ones who take a reminder and take benefit, take this nasiha. And so what I wanted to do is basically explain then, try to explain inshallah, how do we go about understanding ahadith that speak about these types of things, or verses of the Quran that speak about these type of things. Just kind of, maybe you want to take note of a couple of important terms inshallah. Shaykh Mateen, you referenced them last week as well. I want to continue this conversation inshallah using our hadith that we're going through. With regards to the Quran and with regards to the hadith, the verses of the Book of Allah and the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, the first way that we understand what it means is called tafsir. Okay, tafsir. Okay, tafsir is done by one of two ways. Okay, tafsir is done primarily, first and foremost, by either Allah or the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam clarifying themselves what this word means or what this ayah means. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says at the end of Surah Al-Hijr, وَاعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. وَاعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. And continue to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until yaqeen comes to you. So what does this mean? Okay, I'm a Muslim now, I have yaqeen, okay, stop, we're done. Okay, no, that's not what it means, right? The authentic narrations, Bukhari, Muslim, and other books of tafsir, Abdullah ibn Abbas, and many others, right? They tell us that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam clarified here in this ayah, the word yaqeen means, does anybody know? Death. Okay, yaqeen can mean other than death, yes? Yaqeen can also mean certainty, yaqeen can mean confidence, yaqeen can mean no doubt, right? But here it does not mean any of those things. What does yaqeen mean? That's it, right? Inevitable. Definitely going to happen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us afiyah and safety at the time of our death. Ameen ya rabbal alameen. وَعَبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. Okay, so that's an example of tafsir. Okay, that's an example of tafsir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Fatiha, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. Guide us to the straight path. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم, the path of those upon whom you have favored. Okay, who are the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored? Okay, so in another ayah in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us. Right, in Surah An-Nisa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أولئك الذين أنعم الله عليهم من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا. Who are the people that are on the straight path? Who are the people that we are making dua to Allah in every rakat of our salah? Guide us to the straight path. What are we saying? Who are we referring to? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in another ayah in the Quran. He says, what? أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. 4 categories of people are the ones who go to Jannah. An-Nabiyyin, the prophets of Allah, the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam. Was-Siddiqeen, the Sahaba, and the people who followed the previous prophets. Was-Shuhada, the people that gave their life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Was-Salihin. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the Salihin and also grant us Shahada as well when the time and opportunity comes. Ameen ya rabbal alameen. So, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم is referring to who? These 4 categories of people. It's there in another ayah of the Quran. That is an example of tafsir. The other way that we do tafsir is by using the tools of the language. Okay, we understand grammar, we understand the meanings of certain words. We understand sarf and nahwa. We understand all of the different branches of learning, different branches related to Quran, related to hadith. We understand what is the context of a surah being revealed, what is the occasion upon which this incident took life in the time of the incident took place in the life of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Using all of that, okay, we come to a conclusion that this is what it means. Okay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I made this mistake when I was in Hifz class, right? وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ. Sijil students, right? Which one's the fa'il, which one's the maf'ul, which one's the fi'l? وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam with a number of commands, فَأَتَمَّهُنَّ, and he fulfilled them. Right? وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ. Ibrahim alayhi salam in the ayah comes first, but Ibrahim alayhi salam is not the one doing the testing, right? A'udhu billah. Who is doing the testing? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And who is fulfilling the test? Ibrahim alayhi salam. But how do we know that? Because of grammar. Ibrahima is mansub, it's maf'ul bihi, it's the object. And then Rabbuhu is fa'il, it's marfu with the dhamma. Even though it says Ibrahima first and it says Rabbuhu first, in a standard jumla fi'liya you have ibtala, the fa'il, the fi'l, Madi, and then you have Rabbuhu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then Ibrahima, the maf'ul bihi, when his Rabb tested Ibrahim alayhi salam. But here the construction is a little bit different. The mistake that I made, and I got very close to getting smacked in the face by my Hifz teacher, is وَإِذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبَّهُ, which is what? Ibrahim alayhi salam tested Allah azza wa jal, right? وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. It's completely wrong, right? Make sure that you don't make that mistake, but this is an example. Right? It cannot mean anything other than Ibrahim alayhi salam was tested by, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested Ibrahim alayhi salam. And we know that just because of the way the grammar works in the language. Another example is in Surah Fatir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءُ. إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءُ. From among the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more or inherently, right? The people of knowledge, the ulama. But what if you read it, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهُ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءَ? Right? Multiple levels of kufr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't fear anyone. Allah doesn't have companions. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala definitely doesn't fear people of knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-alim. Right? One haraka mistake, two haraka mistakes, right? Completely different meaning, or at least wrong meaning. It can never mean that. So this is another way that we understand what certain verses, certain ayat of the Quran, of the hadith mean, just by using these tools. Okay. I hope this is making sense. So this is called tafsir. This is called tafsir. Now, we get to then certain words within the Quran and within the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. There is no tafsir for or clarification for from Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And doesn't matter how much grammar you know, doesn't matter how pakka your gardans are, doesn't matter how well you've done your nahwa and sarf, okay? You and me are not able to get to what the exact meaning is, right? These are examples of the mutashabih. وَالْتَفَّتِ السَّاقُ بِالسَّاقِ وَيَدُ اللَّهِ فَوْقَ أَيْدِيهِمْ ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ. Right? The word saq, وَالْتَفَّتِ السَّاقُ بِالسَّاقِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the word saq in English means shin bone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have a shin bone. يَدُ اللَّهِ فَوْقَ أَيْدِيهِمْ. The word yad in English means hand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have a hand. Right? ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ. The word istiwa, istaw, the Imam says straighten, right? Position or establish yourself, right? Don't move. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going from one place to another place. He's not in a place. So He is using these words in the book of Allah, His book, His speech. What do we do with these things? The first thing that we do is nothing, right? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us? That the mutashabih ayat, you and me are supposed to stay away from. You and me are supposed to stay away from. Okay? Imam Ahmad al-Hanbal, someone narrates from him, one of his students, that claim to have said that for me to kind of speculate on what words like this mean, when Allah Himself has not clarified it, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam Himself has not told us what it means, for me to have speculated about that and run my mouth about that, right? I would rather have things like zina and theft in my book of deeds in front of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala rather than speak about Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala in this way. Why are you talking about what I said? Why are you trying to figure out exactly what I have said? What is the difference then between you and me being the creator of Allah, being the creator, and you and me being the creation? Right? Imam Malik Rahmatullahi, he was asked about this also. And what did he say? Right, Shaikh referred to it last week. Al-istiwa'u ma'lum wal-kayfu majhul. Istiwa, this is a word that's in the Arabic language, that's also in the Quran. For you and me it means one thing, but for Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, we don't know what it means. What does Imam Malik Rahmatullahi say? Al-istiwa'u ma'lum wal-kayfu majhul. Istiwa is known. Why? Because Allah said it. Allah said it. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam confirmed that this is what Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala said. Wal-kayfu majhul. How did it happen? Is it he was standing and sat down, or he was sitting and kind of sat up straight? Allah, we don't know. Istiwa can mean any of those things. It can mean when the Imam says straighten your rows, istawu wa'tadil. When Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala uses the word istiwa for Himself as an action that He did, it doesn't mean any of those things. Right? It means whatever Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala wants it to mean. Your and my language, your and my understanding of language, the alphabet letters, the nahwa sarf, these are all a creation of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, and the creation is not able to grasp the Creator. What exists within the creation, the limits of creation, is by in itself, by definition, unable to understand the Creator, Azza wa Jalla, Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. وَالْإِيمَانُ بِهِ وَاجِبٌ وَالسُّؤَالُ عَنْهُ بِدَى. Imam Malik Rahmatullah, he continues that believing in it is wajib. For a person to reject any ayah of the Quran, right? لِلْأَكْثَرِ حُكْمُ الْكُلِّ. If you reject a portion of it, that means you reject all of it. You cannot say, I believe in all of the Quran except for like one or two surahs. No, that is complete kufr. That is not like a little bit of kufr. That is complete kufr. Right? So, okay, whatever this word means, what do we do with it? Imam Malik Rahmatullah, he says, Al-imanu bihi wajibun. We believe it because Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala said it, because we trust the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We have no other reason why we need to believe it. This is the word of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. This is what the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told us. وَالسُّؤَالُ عَنْهُ بِدَى. Asking about it, this is an innovation. If Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala Himself does not clarify, if Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam Himself does not clarify, if Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala told us, don't worry about it, okay, don't worry about it. وَأُخَرُ مُتَشَابِهَاتٍ فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ ابْتِغَاءَ الْفِتْنَةِ وَابْتِغَاءَ تَأْوِيلِهِ. This is what Iman means. Iman means you submit to Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. You submit to the command of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala. Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala is telling us, don't worry about it. If it was something that we needed to know, we would have known it. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would have told us about it. Even though we don't know what it means, do we still get benefit from reciting those words? Do we still get benefit from reciting? We don't know what Alif Lam means. Alif Lam Mim means. But does a person still get benefit from reciting the verses of the Quran, even if each and every single letter, you don't know the meaning of it? You don't know the translation of it? You still get reward for each and every single harakah. This is also what Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said. The difference is, that person who has this type of doubt and corruption in their heart, that prevents that person from actually benefiting from everything else which is muhkam in the Quran and in the Sunnah. And so this is a question that we need to ask ourselves. Right? And one way that we can understand it is that you and me, the creation, people, it's humans, we're less than bacteria and viruses in front of Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, trying to give meanings to words that can't be given meanings. You are trying to translate a word that cannot be translated. You are trying to understand something that Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala Himself is saying that cannot be understood. It just must be believed. How, what, when it comes to Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala, right, we don't know. We can never know. And that is exactly what Iman is. Right? We believe in Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala كَمَا هُوَ بِأَسْمَائِهِ وَصِفَاتِهِ وَقَبِلْتُ جَمِيعَ أَحْكَامِهِ وَأَرْكَانِهِ. We believe in Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala as He is. As He is. With all of His names, with all of His attributes, and we accept all of His commands and all of His instructions and rulings. Right? This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in that ayah. Okay. And then after going over that, Imam Malik rahmatullah, he said, وَالسُّؤَالُ عَنْهُ بِدَى. Right? This is an innovation. Asking about it, trying to figure out the why, trying to figure out the how. This is not something that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum were fixated on. This is not something that the Tabi'in rahimahullah were fixated. This is not something that the Salaf worried about. Okay, it was not an important part of Iman to know exactly what does this ayah mean. Do you believe that the Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yes. Do you believe that you have to recite it? Do you believe that you have to follow it? Okay, there's no worldly hukam attached to this other than believing that the Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We leave it at that and we focus on every other verse of the Quran. We leave these mutashabi ayat. Okay. Now as history then continues, kind of crash coursing it or summarizing it or condensing it, inshallah. As time goes on, we can talk more about politics later, but suffice it to say, the further that we get from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the time of the Khair al-Qurun, things get worse. And earlier on in the history of the Ummah, things got considerably worse. As Islam spreads to places further and further away from Arabia and where the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and the Tabi'in lived, okay, it's not enough just to say وَالسُّؤَالُ عَنْهُ بِدَى. Why? Because people are influenced by European philosophy, Aristotelian philosophy. People are influenced by other religious traditions, whether it be Christianity, Judaism, or otherwise. Even Judaism and Christianity at that time have already been completely modified from the way it was during the time of Musa alayhi salam or Isa alayhi salam. Right? So just to say that, okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best is not popular or is not good enough. What then happens is the next method of being able to understand, okay, these verses of the Quran. Okay? And that is called ta'weel. Okay? Ta'weel. Okay? Which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about in the ayah. وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله والراسخون في العلم. Okay, so Imam Ghazali, rahmatullahi, side note, he actually, and many others, prefer a different way of reciting this ayah, a different way of waqf. That nobody knows the meaning of these except for وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. That only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, and only those people who are rasikh fil ilm. But the other way that commonly is translated, that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, and then rasikh is part of the next part of the ayah, next sentence. But in any case, right, if any of us are rasikh fil ilm, then please make dua for me, inshallah. Okay. It's not enough just to say that, okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Okay? So what happens? We now have this third kind of, first is tafsir. Sorry, first is just not touching it. Second is doing tafsir, okay? And then after that we have ta'weel. Okay? Ta'weel is a word may have any number of possible meanings, any number of possible interpretations. When we do ta'weel now, what do we have to do? Okay, we have to make sure that we pick an interpretation, a meaning that doesn't go against our main ground rule. What is the main rule? Right? The main rule is what? وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. If there is some particular opinion that contradicts that ayah of the Quran, right, then we will leave that interpretation to make sure that this principle remains intact. Okay. So, Yadullahi fawqa aydihim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, here he is saying, Yadullahi fawqa aydihim. The translation is very straightforward. Yadullah, mudaf mudaf ilayh, the hand of Allah, fawqa mudaf aydihim. Mudaf mudaf ilayh, their hands. If we translate it word for word in English, Yadullahi fawqa aydihim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hand is above their hands. Okay, the word yad in Arabic means hand. You and me, this is what we think of when we say the word yad, or we read the word hand. This is what we're thinking about. Okay? If you say the word paw, you're talking about cats and dogs and non-humans, right? But when you say the word hand, this is what you and me are referring to. Okay. So, we know that the rule is what? The rule is lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad laysa kamithlihi shay. There's nothing like Allah. So Allah does not have a hand. Fingers, nails, knuckles, grip, fist, skin, hair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have anything that you and me imagine when we say read, think of the word hand. Yes? To believe that is kufr, and to believe that is completely inappropriate. Okay, so if we were to do ta'wil, then what do? Okay, it can mean a literal hand, or we use the word hand in English as well. Give me a hand. It doesn't mean chop it off, here you go. Okay, what does it mean when we say give me a hand? Help, support. Okay, all right, I need a hand, pick me up. Okay, right? Handle this, right? What do we say? Take care of this, okay? All hands on deck, right? We need everybody to show up. We use it in very common, very regular language as well. There is a literal meaning, but you and me all know it's not referring to the literal meaning of a physical hand. It's referring to something else. It's referring to support, or it's referring to assistance, or it's referring to control or authority. Right? He has the upper hand. Right? What does that mean? Right? He has the upper hand. He's authority on top. Right? The hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is what? The upper hand is better than the lower hand. Right? What is that referring to? The hand that gives is better than the hand that receives. Right? Referring to sadaqah. Right? May Allah give us all the tawfiq. This is very common, that you don't use a literal meaning to translate or understand a particular concept. This is common even with our own lives and speech, right? We see words like hand exist like this all the time. Okay, so we're talking about Yadullahi fawqa aydihim. The hand of Allah is above their hands. Okay? It could mean a literal hand, all right? Or it could mean assistance, it could mean support, it could mean authority, it could mean control, right? Knowledge, it could mean any of those things. Or it could mean pink lemonade. It could mean pink lemonade. It could mean apple juice, all right? Yadullahi fawqa aydihim, right? This is an ayah speaking about the divine nature of apple juice. Okay. All right, and if you think that's funny, there are bona fide deviant groups within the ummah, people who say La ilaha illallah, that have built institutions based off of very backwards types of beliefs and interpretations like that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, right? And protect our iman. Okay? So, okay. It could mean one of three things. It could mean a literal hand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a hand, fingers, right? Or, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it can mean Yadullahi fawqa aydihim. Allah's help is with them. Allah's control is over them. Allah's knowledge is with them. Allah's support is with them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has authority over them. Or it could mean pink lemonade. Okay, can it mean the first one? No. Why? Because that goes against the ayah. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. There's nothing like Allah. That can't be the meaning of yad. That's the rule. Okay? Alright? Can it be pink lemonade? Did pink lemonade even exist at the time of the Quran being revealed? Is there any indication? Is there any other supporting evidence? Is there any other ayah of the Quran? Is there any other hadith? Is there any saying from any of the salaf that yad here refers to pink lemonade or apple juice? Okay, let's just be honest here. Unless someone has proof that it means something else, then fine. But can it mean that, or does it mean that? Absolutely not. There's no qarina, there's no clue, indication at all. Right? So therefore, right, the way to do ta'wil is that this may possibly refer to the control, the help, the assistance, the authority, the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It definitely cannot mean any one of the other two interpretations. Is this making sense? Okay. And so there are people that insist on doing ta'wil, but like in a different way. Or they say that we can do ta'wil whenever we want. Well, no, you can't, not really. Right? Because why? You're going to continue to contradict this first point. Or even if you don't contradict this first point, right, you are end up doing ta'wil anyway by claiming that you're trying to take the literal meaning. It's impossible to take the literal meaning, and it's impossible to do ta'wil at the same time. Right? And I'll give you an example. And catch people off guard. Don't debate with people, but just to point out kind of the inconsistency in methodology, right? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ثم استوى على العرش. He did istiwa upon the arsh. Okay? Alright, we'll come back to that in a second. But then in another ayah in Surah Zukhruf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي فِي السَّمَاءِ إِلَهُ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَهُ وَهُوَ الْحَكِيمُ الْخَبِيرُ. What does that ayah say? That ayah says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي فِي السَّمَاءِ إِلَهُ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is God, ilah, in the heavens. وَفِي الْأَرْضِ, and He's also God in the earth. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيمُ الْخَبِيرُ. He's the most knowledgeable, the most informed. So where is He then? Is He upon the arsh, doing istiwa? Is He in the sky? Is He on the earth? Where is He? Huh? So then, okay, they will try to explain it in this way. No. Right? We're saying that He is literally sitting on a chair in the sky. You have to work with me. We're saying that, okay, Allah says He did istiwa, that means He's sitting on a chair in the sky. But then, what about this other ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying He's in the earth and He's in the sky? What does that mean? Oh, it means that His Godhead, or His extension, or His well, okay, you're doing that wheel. You don't see that you're doing that wheel? You're saying that you're taking a literal interpretation. You're saying that you can translate this and Allah has a hand, or Allah is standing and then doing istiwa, sitting down on the arsh, but at the same time you're saying that He can whatever in the sky and He can also whatever in the earth as well. You're doing ta'wil also. Problem is, your ta'wil is inconsistent, doesn't make sense the way that we're doing ta'wil, right? Makes a lot more sense and is a lot more consistent, and also doesn't contradict any other principles regarding the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And so we don't say that yadullahi fawqa aydihim, this only means help earth, or we don't know. But it definitely cannot mean this, and it definitely cannot mean apple juice, okay? Or a glove, or a punching bag, or a grip, or a dumbbell. It definitely doesn't mean any of those things. Right? Because there's no proof for any of those things. So this is an example of how to do ta'wil. Right? And later on, the schools of orthodoxy fought against the different movements of heterodoxy. Later on, they would become known as the Ash'ira and the Maturidiyya, in which they responded to questions like this using ta'wilat like this. Right? Otherwise, people are already corrupted by influences into their aqidah, by all of these other things outside of the Quran and outside of the Sunnah, or people claiming to be followers of the Ahl Sunnah, people to claim to be followers of the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, but are coming out or are presenting and are transmitting these opinions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, na'udhu billah, was standing and then sat down on His arsh, sitting on a chair in the sky. In order to respond that, in order to refute that, in order to correct people's notion and people's understanding about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we interpret it in this way. There are certain things like yadullahi fawqa aydihim that have somewhat more clarity. We can do ta'wil. It can mean hand or assistance or support. Words like istiwa, thumma istawa ala al-arsh, right? How do you even begin to do ta'wil of something like that? What could it mean? Istiwa, right, means ta'wil, interpretation. Yeah, ta'wil means to interpret, right? Awwilu ta'wilan, ta'wil. Okay?
So when He says the exalted, the great, He comes in the last Ashra down. Certain interpretations, and that's where for example, the Ashari said that it's His mercy.
Yeah.
But then there are others who said, if that's the case, if He's saying that He comes down, then He has mass and density, and they went into that direction. So how do we interpret such?
The first one, yeah, it's mercy. And just leave it at that. It's just mercy, and we leave it at that.
I have one more ta'wil that Allah comes to Salah Dunya every night and asks anybody wants anything, anybody. So exactly what He's saying, we just don't know exactly what it is, but He comes down so we can ask Him for things. So you can say something about that.
Yeah, so again, what does that mean? Does that mean He's sitting in a chair in the sky, then He gets up and takes the elevator down, and He's looking down on us like this, right? Binoculars? Is that what it means?
Some scholars say you just take it on at its face value. How
That's-
it happens, it's
That's
it's an unseen knowledge.
that's the correct way to understand it.
And that was the position of Shaykh Yasir Qadhi, in fact, in one of his classes, that's how he explained it.
That's the correct way that we are supposed to understand it, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have like a door of the clouds and he looks and he sees and looks in the CCTV feed who's in the Musalla of MCMC in the middle of the night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't believe in any of that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He comes down, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He looks at the universe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He hears, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sight, His vision, all of these things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. As far as what it looks like, right? We don't follow an interpretation or a meaning that goes against وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. So again, mercy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy descends, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection. Right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes down in the last part of the night to see where are those asking for istighfar, where are those asking for a specific type of need. Does that mean that, A'udhu Billah comes through the ceiling and he's like looking down and this, that? Right? We don't believe that about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We believe what Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said. We believe what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, but we have to be very clear about what is correct and what is not correct, what is appropriate, what is not appropriate for our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where we left off last time, and this is the point that I want to kind of reiterate again now that we've kind of gone over a couple of things here. Okay, as soon as we begin to creation-ify, okay, as soon as we begin to describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that we understand and describe created things or the universe, a lot of messed up things happen. Okay, the reason why, again, many people are atheists today, the reason why many people have left even Christianity and Judaism today, and en masse many people have left and are still leaving Hinduism, and those are all, even shirk religions is a little bit more straightforward, right? But even other religions like Christianity and Judaism, the reason why many is because in their traditions, God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has been made to be like a person. Like I said, like Zeus, right? Some type of souped up Caucasian silvery hair eating jarrows and throwing thunderbolts at people on top of Mount Olympus. We do kufr of that as well. We do kufr of that as well. We cannot be clearer in how kufr that is. We don't believe that that is the creator of the universe. Any type of understanding that makes a similarity, that makes a comparison of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to His creation. We are struggling, we are forcing, we are hopelessly trying to give meanings to words that cannot receive meanings. And why? It's because it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even language is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your and my ability to understand spelling, your and my ability to understand pronunciation, all of this is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to explain to you and me what hand means, what yad means, what istiwa means, what saq means, what any of these things mean, you and me don't even have the reference point to be able to begin to understand it. We're less than a bacteria in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Shaykh, can you explain it? Before Astwaying Arash, Allah Ta'ala stay on water. What does it mean?
Wakana?
Before going to Astwaying Arash, Allah Ta'ala is resting on water.
So same thing, what does it mean? Does it mean Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is floating, he's sitting in a boat? A'udhu billah, that's not what it means. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Wallahu a'lam bi Allah
There is one more hadith
Yeah.
about our Prophet. He said, when inshallah everybody go to Jannah, that you will see God's face just like you see the light of the moon. No description more, just that. You can say something about that.
So same thing, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like the moon?
Yes.
The moon is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So just again, to tell the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, once we are within the unseen, we're now within this dunya, but that is the ghaib, right? What is in part of the ghaib and what is within the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's not us. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's saying that, okay, once you're there and the limits of the universe, the limits of creation are not going to be there, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will show Himself to the righteous, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best what that means, what that looks like. But again, this is encouragement for you and me. The more we believe and strengthen our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, we get the answers to all of these questions. Right? Brother Hamza sources this from the UK. He says something very interesting, that you and me, we have the pixel, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the picture. You know what a pixel is? Pixel, right?
No.
Megapixel. Pixel is a dot of light behind a screen that makes the image on your screen. Okay? Right, so what I was trying to highlight with my example. You and me, we have the pixel. Everything that we see is very, very tiny, insignificant, irrelevant reference point. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the entire picture. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the entire picture. What is time in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You and me, we know what past is, we know what present is, we know what now is, we know what yesterday is, we know what tomorrow is, we know what late is, we know what early is. None of those things apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Delay, we don't, none of those concepts apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You and me, we experience time, right? One at a time, okay? Even when you record a video and then you upload it on YouTube and you're like, okay, I know that this is what's going to happen at minute 30. Well, that's because the first time you did it, right, that's what you did, right? But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at time, right, how many of you remember movie reels or before, like digital and stuff? Anybody old enough to remember video cassettes, right, or movie reels? So how did it used to work, right, for the youngins out there? Okay, you have 30 frames per second or 23 frames per second. You have a motion picture. That's why it's called a movie, because it moves, in case you didn't know that. You have thousands and thousands of pictures on cellulose, on film, that is being projected by a light onto a giant screen, and one after another, these frozen still pictures, because of how fast the roll is moving, it looks like a moving picture. It's called a motion picture. Does that make sense? Now everything's digital, but okay, that's how it originally was. But now, imagine you have a giant backlit white screen, and you take all of the little pictures from that movie reel and cut them up and paste them onto that screen one by one. Would you and me be able to understand the movie?
No.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's at the beginning is the exact same to him as what's at the end. The middle, the beginning, the end, the before, the after. Right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at the east, the west is in front of him. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at the south, the north is in front of him. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at the earth, the sky is in front of him. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking into anything in the universe, the entire universe, all of it is within his experience and vision and sight and knowledge and power at all times, without any limits. You and me, everything about our understanding of the universe is contained by limits. It's very, very important that we understand this, right? And I want to emphasize here, we're talking about a number of very academic topics in Aqidah and kalam and things like that. It's okay if it doesn't make sense right away. It's okay if we haven't thought about this. It's okay if certain things we need to hear again. If it's okay if we need to ask questions, all of that is okay. The point that I want to make is that it is very, very important when we talk about our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's important for us to know what's not correct. Okay? You don't have to memorize all the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't have to memorize the entire Quran to be a believer. Right? But you, me, all of us, we should, at least to a very functional, practical extent, know what is absolutely not correct and absolutely not allowed, what is haram. We may not be able to do all of the fara'id, all of the different branches of worship, all of the commands of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, but even perhaps more important than that is knowing what is incorrect and knowing what we are not supposed to do. And the last thing that I'll mention is the ulama have stated, right? We want to make sure we don't forget to mention something about the tasawwuf, right? And spirituality and these majalis, that the ulama have stated very clearly, the month of Ramadan is coming up. To stay away from ma'siyah, to stay away from committing a sin. You have the opportunity, you have tawfiq to do a sin. To stay away from doing a sin, this is actually a good deed. And this is perhaps even more of a significant and better good deed for you than doing extra nawafil. Right? The fara'id are the fara'id, but we're talking about adding onto the fara'id, doing extra sunnah, extra nawafil, sadaqah, fasting, salah, all of those things. More important than adding all of this extra stuff into your and my life, more important than all of that is to stay away from the sins. Stay away from those things which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam disliked. Even if it's not haram, it's just makruh, still it's better to stay away from that. For your and my spiritual relationship, connection with Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam to get stronger, I make dua. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me and all of us so much tawfiq, so much tawfiq, so much tawfiq. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our iman, strengthen our iman, correct our iman. It takes time, right? I don't want to very confidently say that I figured this stuff out while I was studying or even after I was studying as well. You have to reread, you have to meet the right people, you have to speak to the right people. Alhamdulillah, may Allah bless and preserve our mashayikh. But Imam Ghazali rahmatullahi alayhi, he said this, that for a person to think, oh, it doesn't make sense to me, therefore it's wrong. No, that's arrogance and that's ignorance, right? Go ask somebody else that it did make sense to. Go ask somebody else more knowledgeable than you, more pious than you, someone who is a stronger level of connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be in that person's company. All of this stuff, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the doubts Allah will remove from your heart, right? This is something that requires us to trust and submit in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he is our guide and he is our source of connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I may go, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me and all of us so much tawfiq and share.
On the subject of correct interpretation, the verse وَمَا قَتَلَهُ وَسَلَبْهُ in the case of Isha ibn Maryam, the reality, and correct me if I'm mistaken here, Mufti Niaz, the reality is, as Muslims, we don't know exactly what happened and how he was taken, because when you read certain commentaries of certain scholars, they brought in concepts from the Christian that an image was placed on a man, etc., etc. Is that correct?
Right, so the ayah says, وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُم, right? That it seemed like it looked like Isa bin Maryam, alayhi salam, who was being crucified, right? But the belief is that no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him from the heavens and somebody else was in his place. And whatever the Christian commentary is, I can't recall the tafsir off the top of my head right now. Maybe Malasab can help.
So the reality is we don't know exactly whether it is just those interpretations were brought in.
Right. But it definitely was not the actual Isa bin Maryam alayhi salam. He is still alive. He did not die in this world. He is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept him in the heavens, right? I believe it's the second level up.
I'm coming more from an angle of ta'wil.
Right.
We say that those ta'wils were not actually.
Again, if it goes against what is unanimously accepted, then we can't accept those things. Or the specifically, the speculative, what could it be? There is we'll talk about this inshallah, the Israeliyat and their position, but somewhat of an indirect answer is that part of where we get some inspiration and instruction from our deen from is called Israeliyat. Israeliyat from hadith studies refers to basically sources from Christian and Jewish tradition, right? So the filler material, things about the previous ummahs, things about the previous prophets of Allah. The approach with those types of narrations or those types of details or that type of commentary, whether it be seerah or tafsir or otherwise, is that if it goes against an established principle, one of the established principles is, for example, Ismatul Anbiya, the prophets of Allah, they are masum. The prophets of Allah, they don't commit major sins, right? So, a number of contemporary ulama have written about this. I don't want to mention names now, it's going to cause fitna. But okay, if someone believes that, for example, Dawood alayhi salam was a tyrant, or someone says that Sulaiman alayhi salam did this or did this, in a way that is against the concept of the prophets of Allah being protected from major sins, then we reject that. But if it's something that does not contradict an established principle of the deen, something that we must believe about the prophets of Allah or the Quran or about the previous ummahs, then we can maybe work with it. We don't say that this is exactly what happened. We say this is a possibility. This is also part of academic integrity, that you say, you quote, this is the reference, this is the source, this is not the correct, exact, established answer from Allah. This is a possibility. This is someone's research, this is someone's effort, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The beginning and end is what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Okay. Yes?
There is something about the person who took him the cross, that our Isa alayhi salam, he was 13 friends, and the day before the book of the cross, he went to the room and he asked the 13, who wants to take my place, because he knows they're going to the cross, who wants to take my place and he will go to heaven. Then they just don't want, and one of them, who looks very, very similar to our, Isa alayhi salam, he accepts. And that's how the cross that man, Allah took Isa to heaven. I don't know if you have this before, but you can.
No, I can't remember the tafsir right now. We did read it. It's a lengthy discussion, but inshallah we can bring it up next time, inshallah. Exactly what is the tafsir of that ayah. But again, to answer the question, that if it's something that goes against one of these established rules with regards to Allah and Aqidah, then we can't accept it. Otherwise, if it's consistent, we can say this is possible, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Yes, Brother Ibrahim.
This is a question about da'wah, like to non-Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as we know, Allah says, "We'll have to judge with the ability of Islam," right? Then also, a lot of Christians, I've talked to some that they recognize their Bible has been changed, and others. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do we reconcile between, or maybe there's no reconciliation, maybe it's just my ignorance, right? How, if I understand this, the translation of the verse speaks to them in a way that's, وَلَا تُجَادِلُوا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ وَقَالُوا آمَنَّا بِالَّذِي أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكُمْ وَإِلَٰهُكُمْ وَإِلَٰهُنَا وَاحِدٌ. And then, for example, some of them say, Dawud alayhi salam, I can't even.
Right, so
their
again,
imaginations are just.
no, so again, what I said, that's there, obviously, especially when you're trying to invite people. The word da'wah means an invitation. Don't be mean to the person that you're trying to invite. Don't be rude or disrespectful. That being said, it depends on who you're talking to. If they are someone that you can kind of present it in this way, okay, this is, based on my research, this is what Christianity says, this is what the Quran says, and, do it in a nice way, do it in a respectful way, have an academic conversation. This is where we believe the version of the Bible that exists today, this is mistaken or this is incorrect, this is what the Quran says, right? And this is why we believe and confirm and can accept what the Quran says, right? And you have a dialogue in that way, right? And that is the best way, right? It's not about forcing them or making them agree with you, right? It's about delivering the message in a way that they will continue to listen to the message, they will continue to learn more about the message. That's how I would answer that specific question related to da'wah. But, we don't hate Christians or Jews, right? We hate kufr, right? And whether or not they are people who are kafir, on the day of judgment we will find out exactly who died upon kufr and exactly who died upon iman. And, who did not do, what they were supposed to do in this world, right? Otherwise, our job in this world is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be examples of how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to others, okay? If you come with an attitude other than which is ahsan, especially to someone who already fundamentally disagrees with you, then, why would they accept you? Right? So that's how I would kind of approach that situation. It's a very good question.
Do you give like da'wah sometimes?
Excuse me?
Are there times that,
Not as much as I used to, but yeah. Alhamdulillah.
if you're going, just let us.
Of course, inshallah.
Maybe
Of course,
people want to
inshallah.
come too.
I did a lot of street dawah in the UK when I was still studying.
I have one more thing
Yes,
to say.
yes, please.
One more thing to say, maybe some here help me. I don't know if you heard me or not. A couple days ago, last week I was thinking when I was reading Surah Ali Imran that Isa alayhi salam, he have a mother. That's how I start doing the da'wah with others. So I tell them that Isa alayhi salam have mother. They say yes. I said, Mary alayhi salam, she have father and she have mother, right? They say yes. I said, that's mean Jesus have a grandfather and grandmother. And when they hear that, they start shaking their head. They never ever thought of this, which is impossible, if they think he's God and he has a grandfather and grandmother. So I wish everybody will use this example in a nice way, and that will make them think.
Jazakallah khair, inshallah. I wanted to talk about adl and justice later on. We can save that, inshallah, for another time. Are there any other questions, inshallah? I know we mentioned a lot, so please, inshallah, don't hesitate. Yes?
No,
I
just wanted to clarify when you were talking about Allah descending in the last third of the night. You said take it at face value?
No, I did
I
not.
heard someone say something about face value. I was confused about that.
No, so again, we have a couple of options. We can take it at face value as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a physical form. The way that you and me understand something descending, right? Something's above and going downwards. We can interpret it in that way, or we can interpret it in a figurative way, right? Which is what ta'wil is, that we say this can be okay, right? We interpret it in a figurative way. What is the figurative way? Figurative way is Allah's blessings, Allah's mercy, Allah's forgiveness, Allah's attention, right? Which is not a physical thing, which is not something that is confined to a particular time or place, right? In this case, yes, the last third of the night for us, but for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no difference between night and day. It's whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, time does not apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But for our perspective, yes, that is a better time of the day to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than all other times, right? Nafil ibadah. So we don't take verses or ayat like that or hadith like that at face value. The correct and safer thing to do is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, right? And then to kind of just move on from it, right? The ulama, they do ta'wil in this way, right? That this is referring to Allah's blessing, this is referring to Allah's mercy, this is referring to Allah's forgiveness, right? So I was trying to clarify that, inshallah.
Okay, so when things are written in such a manner like that, where it seems like, A'udhu, like you said, Allah's hand or Allah descends, etc., etc., it's not necessarily like in English literature, it's not necessarily the literal meaning all the time, it's sometimes also the figurative meaning. That's what
Again, I mean, we can translate it and it has a meaning in English, but then is that meaning appropriate for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? So that's what, we are trying to say. No, it's not at all. Right? So then what do we do with it? Allah knows best, okay? And maybe, okay, it can mean hand, it can mean something figurative, right? And we don't say that that's conclusive. That's definitely what it means. It's a possibility. Otherwise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows best exactly what it means. Okay, we will know about those things and many other things in the hereafter on the Day of Judgment once we are there, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us that great reward. But other than that, for us while we are here, Iman means to just submit, right? Al-ajzu anil idraki idrakuhu. Al-ajzu anil idraki idrakuhu. Your and my accepting that we cannot recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is correct and perfect recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The best iman is what? To completely submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't let any of these things allow doubts to grow in your heart or in your mind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as He is, perfect, right? We don't attach any type of imperfection to Him because of what we think a word means, or because what any language translates into another language. This is what that word means, right? That's not acceptable for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I make dua, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me and all of us so much tawfiq. Please remember us in your du'as, inshallah, and you make dua, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from all of us. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. اللهم لك الحمد كما أنت أهله اللهم لك الشكر كما أنت أهله إنك أهل التقوى وأهل المغفرة اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام اللهم أعني على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم إنا نسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاك الله.